It was the year 2081, and everyone was finally equal. They weren't just equal before God and the law. They were equal in every way. Nobody was smarter than anyone else. Nobody was better looking than anyone else. Nobody was stronger or quicker than anyone else. This equality was all thanks to the 211th, 212th, and 213th Amendments to the Constitution and the constant vigilance of the United States Handicapper General's agents. There was only one problem with this paradise. Equality required machinery. If you were strong, for example, you had to wear bags of birdshot to weigh you down. If you were beautiful, you had to wear a hideous mask. If you were smart, you had to wear a radio that simulated a mental handicap in your ear. George and Hazel Bergeron were sitting in their living room watching ballerinas on television. Hazel had average intelligence, which meant she could only think about something for a short time. George, however, was intelligent. He had a small radio in his ear. Every 20 seconds or so, a sharp noise would be sent from the government transmitter to scatter his thoughts like panic-stricken bandits. Buzz, clang, siren. On the screen, ballerinas danced. They weren't very good, no better than anyone else would have been. They wore sash weights and bags of birdshot so that no one would feel inferior to their grace. They wore masks so that no one would feel ugly. "That was a really pretty dance," said Hazel. "Huh?" said George. A buzzer had just sounded in his head. Suddenly, the television program was interrupted. A news announcer appeared. He tried to speak, but he had a severe speech impediment. After all, a news anchor shouldn't make anyone feel bad about their speaking voice. Finally, a ballerina took the paper and read the bulletin. Harrison Bergeron, age 14, has just escaped from jail. He is a genius and an athlete who is under-handicapped and should be regarded as extremely dangerous. A photograph flashed on the screen. It was Harrison. He was 7 feet tall. He carried 300 pounds of scrap metal as a handicap. He wore a rubber ball on his nose and black caps on his teeth to hide his handsome face. He wore giant headphones to distract his massive brain. He looked like a walking junkyard, and he was angry. Suddenly, the studio door was torn from its hinges. In the center of the stage stood Harrison Bergeron. "I am the Emperor!" he cried. "Everyone must do what I say at once!" He stamped his foot, and the studio shook. He tore the straps of his handicap harness as if they were wet tissue paper. He smashed his headphones. He threw away his rubber nose. A man who would have awed Thor, the god of thunder, was revealed. "I shall now select my empress," he declared. He grabbed a ballerina. He stripped her of her mask and weights. She was blindingly beautiful. "Now," Harrison cried to the musicians, "play your best. I will make you barons and dukes." The music began. Harrison snatched 2 musicians from their chairs and waved them like batons. He sang. Then he and his empress began to dance. But they didn't just dance. They defied gravity and the laws of the land. They leaped like deer on the moon. They jumped higher and higher until their lips touched the ceiling of the studio, 30 feet above the ground. They overcame gravity with love and determination. They were free. For one glorious minute, they were the strongest and most beautiful creatures on Earth. Then, the door opened again. It was Diana Moonglampers, the handicapper general. She entered carrying a double-barreled 10-gauge shotgun. She didn't speak. She didn't warn them. She simply aimed at the emperor and empress, who were still hovering near the ceiling. Boom! Boom! They were dead before they hit the floor. Diana Moon Glampers reloaded. She aimed at the musicians. "Put your handicaps back on," she said. "You have 10 seconds." The screen went black. Back in the living room, the Bergeron's television tube burned out. Hazel turned to George. Tears were on her cheeks. "Have you been crying?" George asked. "Yes," she said. "What about?" "I forgot," she said. "Something really sad was on TV." "Forget about sad things," said George. "It's always best." The sound of a gunshot rang in George's head. "Gee," said Hazel. "I could tell that was a doozy." "You can say that again," George replied. "Gee," Hazel said. "I could tell that one was a doozy." In the year 2081, life went on, perfectly, horribly equal.